what should I research? So there's going to come a time in your counselling studies where you're called upon to do a little bit of research into a certain topic or area. And yeah, we get a lot of questions about this, and we've got maybe something to discuss about that, Rory.
Yeah, I think so. I think we've got a lot to discuss about it, Ken. I think the interesting thing about research is it depends on who you're speaking to. If someone's doing a diploma, level 4 or level 8 for our friends in Scotland, it'll be a small scale research project. In other words, you may have to research just on a very small scale and present it. But if you're doing degree or masters, that is going to be a huge part of the completion of your course. So usually it's a complete year of research, learning how to research and to research. And I think choosing what we research is really important, because if we don't set expectations right at the beginning of the research quest, we may come to the end of it and find ourselves in deep waters. An example of that would be someone who says, I'm going to look at trauma with Polynesian tribes. And they start with that. But it may be that the mechanics of interviewing someone in Polynesia, and I'm just pulling that out of the air, is that they might have to travel over there. So what could start off as a really interesting research project and something that could really add to the canon of information helping clients becomes impossible to do. So I think you have to set your expectations and think about, first of all, how long have you got from thinking about the project to handing it in at the end of training duration, and making sure that what you're researching is viable to do. And I think at level 4 or level 8, if you're in Scotland, it's only going to be a short research project. So again, it's about managing those expectations, but making sure you finish it. I've seen a lot of students who have very exciting ideas, but it just doesn't fit into the time they have available.
Yeah, I think that is definitely worth looking at. If you go very niche, and specifically, like you were saying, Rory, at the lower level, so if you're doing a master's degree, then you're going to have pretty much the time set aside, and that's going to be your main focus. But of course, if you maybe at level 4, level 5, you're going to have assignments, you're going to have a lot of other work that needs to be handed in, and your research project is going to be just a small part of that, an important part of it, but a small part of that. And it's there really to prepare you if you do decide to go on, so that you have a basis in the research methodologies and you've been through that and you've felt what that feels like. So at those lower levels, going too niche results in there being little information or difficult to find information, or information that you maybe don't have access to because you don't have access to the research journals that you may have at a higher level. And that causes it to be really hard work, and what can be really exciting in the beginning. And generally the tutor may team you up and you may have a small group, and the group can be so excited about it, and it can be really downheartening when you're not able to access the information within the time. And I think you've just covered that beautifully. And there's no secret that Counselling Tutor, we have a library built for students. We've got a lot of free information on counsellingtutor.com, but we do have a paid-for section called the Student Library. And if you are a member, log in and just do a search for the word research if you're doing a research project. It's got everything from a full research workshop that kind of works you through workshopping your ideas, the importance of research in counselling, your research proposal, which is such an important part. If you're doing research, part of that is going to be a proposal that you put forward to your tutor before you even begin the research, or you may begin a little bit of it, but you're going to say, I'm proposing this research. There's also something that is very valuable in the library, and that's secondary research links. And I know that those are links, Rory, you took a lot of time to go through, find various topics, authority sites that when you have certain area of interest, you might find it on that list. And then presenting your research, that's a whole different section again of how you present that. It usually may mean that you're standing up, you might have a PowerPoint, you may be sharing that presentation with your peers. There's the methods that go into the research, and this is all available in the student library. If you are a member, log in, put in research, it's there for you. If you're not a member, go to counsellingtutor.com and you can find it there on our products page. But there's just a lot to it, isn't it? It's more than just thinking up a good idea and being excited about it.
Yes, the first thing is ethical approval. So having an idea and then can you get ethically approved? And what ethically approved is that usually your tutor looks at the research and says, is this ethical to conduct? So I'll give you an example of that. Many years ago, I was sat in the faculty I worked at, and a colleague from, I think it was the criminology department, said, oh, our students want to do a research on personality disorders in prison. Do you think we should send questionnaires to the prisoners and ask them, and then we could work out if actually a lot of the prison population has personality disorders? And when I'd stopped laughing, she said, why are you laughing? I said, first of all, with research, if you're doing anything with participants, you have to share it with them. I think this was at level 3, which would be level 7 in Scotland, I think, certificate level in Scotland. And I said, you can't be giving people research saying that they've got personality disorders. You can't do that. I said, and secondly, it'd never get past the prison warden. And who's going to do the interviews? How are they going to be conducted? What questions are you going to ask? You're going to ask, have you got a personality disorder? Yes, no, tick. And after I'd explained it, she said, I don't think this is a very good idea, is it? I said, I think the sentiment might be interesting, and I think there could be merit at some level in understanding the mental health and the emotional health of the prison population, but I don't think this is the right way to do it. So the first thing is ethical approval. And once you've got ethical approval, then you have to work out the methodology. There's different forms of methodology. There's ideographic and numerographic, which is you could either go for qualitative research, which is where you're going for numbers, or qualitative research, where you're going for experience. I think I might have got those the wrong way around.
The only way I remember it, Rory, is because quantitative has got quantity. That's how I remembered it for my assignment.
Yes,
quantity, the amount of. Yeah, so quantitative and qualitative, where you're asking questions about their experience and feelings on that, but quantitative, where it's a definite number and easier measured. And I guess coming back to selecting a topic, there's so many topics that you may wish to look at, but what might be worthwhile, and I'm speaking again at the lower levels when you're doing a smaller research project, is if you think about where do you want to work as a counsellor, as a psychotherapist, when you graduate, is there a certain area of work you want to go into? It might be children and young people, working with bereavement. You might want to work with breath work or trauma grounding or clients presenting with trauma. If you look at what are your interests for your further development, where do you see your career going, that can be a great way to select a topic. And you may find, yes, oh, wow, this really resonates and I'm interested in this. Or you may look at that and go, wow, okay, maybe I don't want to go down that route right there. What we've done in the counselling student library, we added in a very specially selected group of CPD lectures that come from our qualified CPD library, which is not open to students, but we've placed them in the student library to give you an idea so that you can have a look at areas where other people specialize and see, is that an interesting area for me? And at least then you got a starting point. And of course, there'll be references there as well that you can follow to research a little deeper. But yeah, research is important. Why is research important, Rory? What's it there for? Does it really apply to therapy?
It does. It applies to everything. And the reason for that is that it is the lifeblood of our profession. It's the living embodiment of what we do. We strive to be more informed, to be better, more replete for our clients. And we do that by asking questions. And the research can be useful for two reasons. One, it's endless curiosity, I think, is brilliant for the intellect, particularly brilliant for anybody who's doing any client-facing work, be they doctors or dentists or any profession, really. Research is really good because we find out more things and we challenge what we believe we know. But also, having a research background, being able to research is very useful for if you get a job, maybe you're working for a charity or an organisation, and it may be you have to pitch for funding. And part of that funding pitch, the specification it's sometimes called, may show research into why you need the funding. And if you've got a background in research, you can use that then you're more likely to get funding. And let's say a final thing. I remember many years ago, I taught criminology modules, and someone was asking the question, should I research CBT, the effectiveness of CBT? So it wasn't for therapy. CBT is used in offender services. Probation service use CBT. And I said, I think that's a fantastic idea. And this person went to the university, put this idea, and the person said, that's been done to death. And she came back and still, the professor says, that's been done to death. And I said, that doesn't mean you stop asking the questions.
Yes.
I said, it probably has been done to death. But you could be the person who finds something that no one else has seen.
Yes.
And that is why we do research. Just because a topic's been covered doesn't mean we can't look at it again with fresh eyes. And I think she went away and seemed to remember, coming back to me, that she did do her research on CBT. So it's very important. And I also think it links into the why. One of the things that drives people in therapy is passion to help people. What is your why? So if you're choosing a subject, what's your why? Why did you come into this work? And if you can find that why, then almost certainly that might be a really good route to take your research down, because that's going to link into your passion. It's going to link into your reason for doing the work. And that's going to make your life a lot easier because it's part of who you are.
I like it, Rory.